Why am I in the office of a plastic surgeon? Because we're talking facelifts. Hi everyone, I'm drinking Intelligentsia's House Blend. I'm going to spend just a few more seconds talking about this blend, and that's because I received several emails from you guys all stating the same thing. I've been drinking this blend for the past couple of shows, and you said that you couldn't find this blend on Intelligentsia's website. So I wasn't aware of that, so I looked into that, and that's because they said they only make this blend for the grocery stores, that you can't even get it in their cafes. So I got mine from Whole Foods, so if you're near Whole Foods, you can get it from there. So thanks for sharing that interest. Cheers. Today's show is about putting new dials on existing watches, specifically Rolex and Grand Seiko. There's some interesting news about being able to use the new Grand Seiko dial interchangeably with the older Grand Seiko models, and we'll get to that. First, I wanted to talk about an email I received from a viewer because it's along the same vein as today's show, and I already replied to him, by the way. He owns a Tudor Black Bay, and he wants to put a Rolex Submariner dial on it. Don't do it. But he had some unique justifications. One, the Black Bay is also owned by Rolex. True. They share a similar look. True. And by putting the Rolex Submariner dial on his Tudor Black Bay, he would essentially be owning a Rolex Submariner at a fraction of the cost. False. There are so many other problems with his justifications. Another one that first came to mind is the dial on a 40mm sub is not going to fit perfectly flush with a 41mm Tudor Black Bay. But he mentioned that he found a way to make that happen, and that suggests to me that that's not an original or an authentic Rolex dial. So I created a mock-up of your Tudor Black Bay with a Rolex Submariner dial. Actually, that's not exactly true. A team of plastic surgeons did. Here's what I mean. Admittedly, it doesn't look half bad, but I don't want to encourage anyone. Rolex and Tudor uses different materials as well. Tudor uses a fine quality surgical stainless steel. Rolex uses a 904L, which is harder, stronger, and more anti-corrosive. But if you don't care about that because it's not visually telling, there are other visual problems as well. Starting with the clasp or the crown, and in regards to the bezel, Rolex doesn't use an aluminum insert, nor do they use the color red. Even if you had the black, it would still be an aluminum insert, and this would be really humiliating to be caught with this watch. This is not even an homage to the Submariner. It's disrespectful to both watches. For sure, I understand the appeal about owning a watch made by Rolex at a fraction of the cost, but this isn't the way. If there was anything worse than fake, this would definitely qualify for it. This wouldn't even be worthy to be called a Tudor Black Bay. This would be a Tudor Frankenstein. Now let's talk about putting a new dial on an existing Rolex. Why do we automatically let out a sigh whenever we hear there are any changes done to a Rolex? Is there a legitimate reason for that, or is it simply a knee-jerk reaction because we see everyone else doing that as well, and we want to appear just as smart? The answer is yes and no. There are some things we can do to a Rolex without affecting its integrity or its value when it comes time to selling it, where it won't be such a deal breaker, such as replacing the lume on a stick, or a polish versus a refinish. Let's let Penn, who works with vintage watches, explain the difference between a refinish.
Generally, what happens is when they polish it, they usually they round off the edges. So one thing that most people look for is that sharp edge on the lugs. So this is a good indication that this was not really tampered with. And then you can see, and then they also judge it by this.
The flexibility.
Yeah. This is a little more stretched than normal, but the condition is okay. But it's not like ideal. Ideal is probably like to be really tight here.
So those are telltale signs that it hasn't been altered in any way.
No. But you can see, but this is worn, but it's okay for because it's considered as 40 years old. Yeah.
No. It's fantastic. What about replacing a perfectly good dial with an all-new dial because I might want a different look when it comes time to selling it? It's true, there are a lot more Rolex purists or Rolex experts than any other watch brand, and that's because Rolex is the most in-demand watch, especially on the pre-owned market. But we're not limited to selling our watch to these people. For a real hardcore watch person, whenever we see a naturally developed patina, it's exciting. We're excited. We want that watch, or we can't wait for our watch to look like that one day. But for the novice watch person, it's dirty and old looking. So a fresh dial will be very appealing to that person. So there will always be a market for this type of person. We can also always find a buyer for Rolex who specializes in vintage looking watches where the dials look new. He will then turn around to sell them to stores like Barney's. I once did a show inside of Barney's where I learned this. It was called Review of Vintage Rolexes. Here's what I mean. Where do you get your sort? Where do you get these?
We have someone who gets them for us.
So could someone like me come and sell you a piece? Okay.
We have a specific dealer that we deal with. We don't just take random, We have a dealer, they clean them up, they change the faces or dye the faces.
And by the way, this Rolex sold. So there will always be a market for someone who wants a Rolex, whether it's for a fashion purpose or just because they like this look. A lot of the times, a new dial is done by Rolex themselves, so that doesn't bother people as much. Nothing changes the look of a watch more than a dial or a strap. So if I wanted to change the look of my watch and go from the white dial to black or brown or rose gold or blue or gray or champagne or possibly grape, I can do that. I can send my watch to Rolex and Rolex will put on any dial from their current lineup for me. They won't customize the watch because they don't stock older dials. So whatever dials they have in the current lineup, they will change that for you. If I was to send this to Rolex strictly to have a new dial, they will still do it, but it's not considered priority for them, so it might take them longer. The cost is about $600. But if I sent in my Rolex for servicing, the loophole is then they will do the new dial or put the new dial on at the same time. And that takes approximately 7 weeks. The cost of servicing is between $600 to $700. So for about $1,200 or $1,300, I will have my watch serviced with an all new look. There is also a loophole here. Whenever we send a watch in for servicing, we get a new warranty, and that dial will match the warranty. Rolex stopped correlating the serial with the date of the year that it was made since 2010. So the other loophole is when we get a new warranty, that new dial will match. Not that we want to try to fool anyone, but that's just something, it's good information to know. Rolex also uses the same parts for 30 years. So if you have a Rolex from 1987, you will have original parts. So technically and legally, we can say it has all original parts, as long as your watch is within 30 years. So can the owner of an older Grand Seiko finally rejoice knowing that we can have the new Grand Seiko dial put on here for us? Maybe. There has been quite a bit of controversy, I guess, or where people are divided on the new Grand Seiko dial. A lot of the people, like myself, and this watch is only a few months old, but it says Seiko Grand Seiko. It doesn't have the new branded Grand Seiko because Grand Seiko just became an independent line of Seiko. It's the exact same watch, the same movement. It just has the new Grand Seiko across the dial instead of Seiko Grand Seiko. There are Seiko Grand Seiko owners who are kind of upset about this because they feel that Grand Seiko has moved away from the roots. So now going with the Grand Seiko, what they might consider more commercial, but that's not factually correct. The first Grand Seiko launched in 1960 didn't have Seiko Grand Seiko. It simply said Grand Seiko. So for me, I don't have a problem with that because to me, Grand Seiko is actually moving more towards the roots, to the original roots of where it says Grand Seiko. There are also people who have the original Grand Seiko that might feel a little bit gypped because maybe they all along wanted the Grand Seiko. For me, it didn't matter that much, obviously, because I still bought it. But do I think it looks better? Yes, I do. I think the new dial that says simply Grand Seiko looks really elegant. I always like that font. I think that font that says GS and Grand Seiko is just really purely elegant. Whenever I stare at my watch, and I like to do that a lot, I don't look at the Seiko name. I look at the Grand Seiko name down here. I've always enjoyed doing that because it's just so elegant. That font is just so perfect. It's really classy. So for me, I wouldn't change my dial because I'm insecure about it having Seiko on top. I might consider changing it because I've always liked that Grand Seiko on there. It's just really prominent. It just pops. It's just really elegant. It still says Seiko, but the way that it says it with the lettering and the font, it's just uber classy to me. But unlike Rolex, where Rolex no longer correlates the serial with the year of the watch made, Grand Seiko does. So if we were to put the new dial on here, it won't match the warranty. If you don't care about that, or if you're not concerned about selling it sometime, then it's no big deal. So will Grand Seiko allow us to put the new dial on the existing models? They won't answer that right away. I contacted Seiko and they actually prefer us to send a watch to them and then they will get back to us within 2 weeks. What was also explained to me is that the watch hasn't changed at all. The case, the finishing, the movement, they're all the same. So as long as the feet on the new dial that says Grand Seiko fit, that is how they left it. The cost is going to be approximately a few $100s, but they wouldn't provide a new quote. And they didn't have the same figures that Rolex has because no one has actually called Seiko to inquire about this. So what's on the wrist was the very first person to have done this. So yeah, I thought that's kind of cool. I was always curious about this, and I'm glad I started that communication. My watch is a limited edition, so it was limited edition to 500 pieces, and it has a GS stamped in here with a special blue. So it might be a little bit more complicated for my dial change. If I wanted the same blue with the same GS on here, but to have Grand Seiko on top, I don't think they were leaning towards where that can't be done. All of the Grand Seiko dials are handmade, and they don't stock these, so they won't have this again. I might have to lose that if I wanted to go down that road one day. So I might have to settle for black or white, or maybe the legendary snowflake dial. I don't think that snowflake dial is actually available on this size. So it's good to know that possibly might exist for those people who felt that they missed out on the Grand Seiko dial who bought the Seiko Grand Seiko dial instead. So I don't have any problems with the owner of an older Grand Seiko model making that change to the new Grand Seiko dial, because that Grand Seiko dial being put front and center is really so elegant. I can't praise it enough. Plus it's actually going more towards the roots of the original 1960 Grand Seiko. Everything is good if we wanted to make that change. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you the next time. So what about changing the dial on a Rolex? On a Rolex. Yeah, on a Rolex. We can always find a buyer for Rolex. There will always be a market, of course. Hello? It's not even an homage to this. Homage? It's not even an homage. Come on. It's not even an homage to the Submariner. Yeah, that was right. It's Friday. I'm running late for dinner.